So I'm out here and I'm applying for these jobs. Now, of course, I still have my job. So again, my manager was very not even understanding. He worked with me to a great deal. So I'm applying for these jobs, and I'm not the type that's just going to just quit a job and not have a job. I'm just not going to do that, because I have my own bills, things I had to do. And for me, I never had like a plan B. I never had something that I can fall back on. I didn't have like a, hey, if you don't make it out here in these streets, you have a home that you can come back to. I did not have that, right? I was raised by my great-grandmother. My grandmother at the time was still living. My mother had already passed at that point. My father was living, somewhere else. So I just did not have a plan B. I didn't have another option. So I definitely was not one of those ones that's like, forget you, and now I'm quitting a job on unemployment just to try to find another job. I've never been that type of person. So here I am, putting in application after application after application, and again, for things that I have experience in. Okay, for things that I have experience in but may not have a degree for. Job after job after job. And of course, I want to be in a position where I'm making, as close to as much money as I was making then. Because one of the things I did do up until that point, whenever it came to job and employment, I was always trying to grow, always looking for the next promotion, always looking for the next raise, that sort of thing. And I worked my butt off in order to get it. Okay, so if I was at one job and I, worked my way and I couldn't get a raise or whatever the case may be, or hit a roadblock, then I would go to the next job. But I wouldn't move jobs unless I was moving to a job where I could get at least $1 or $2 more in pay. I would not move jobs if it was just the same pay. So that's just how I normally operated. So here I am, looking for jobs, hitting brick walls, hitting brick walls. And I just don't quite remember exactly how long this search took throughout this time frame. I don't remember how long it took, but I came across, and I don't know if it's actually a job that my manager recommended or not. I can't remember that. But I came across this job, and it was for local real estate sales and property management company. And I literally had never worked in real estate before. Never worked in property management before, not a day in my life. About the extent of my experience was HGTV. And baby, when I tell you I watched HGTV so much that I thought I was the decorating queen. I was the, I watched it so much to the point where I was your HGTV guru. But I had not worked in property management. I had not worked in real estate. So I came across this job, and it was for receptionist. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. Of course I can do that. And at this point, I believe the pay was the exact same, if not a little bit less, than what I was making at the time. And like I said, that's not normally the way that I would move. But I went to this interview and I said, okay, I need to find something different. So I went to this particular job interview, and I met with the owner at the time, and I thought that was interesting. I thought it was very cool. So did all that good stuff, went through the first interview, went through the second. But during my interview process, right, because again, I'm working off experience. So during my interview process, she was kind of just asking me, what my goals were and all that good stuff. It was a smaller real estate and property management company that was growing, growing real estate property management company. And I thought that was so interesting to get in at the ground level, right? She was just asking me questions, and I at some point I brought up the fact that, like, I'm your girl. For everything that you're saying, I'm your girl. If you give me the vision, I can take it and run with it. I do remember telling her that. So, of course, I get called back for the second interview, the final interview. I'm hired. Okay, so I'm hired. I get this job. I'm super excited. We kind of go through this whole thing. So here I am, looking like deer in the headlights at this job that I have no experience in this industry. Zero, none, no experience in this industry. But I could answer phones, and I could take you a skills that I had. I used the skills that I had, and I used them well. And what I did, of course, coming in as a receptionist, and because this was a growing company, okay, that is very important. Because this was a growing company, this was something that she mentioned to me. Because, side note, every time you go to an interview, please know and understand that they are interviewing you, but you are also interviewing them. Okay, very, very important. Because a lot of times the mistake that I see from our youngsters, and actually sort of not really, because nowadays them young ones think very, very different. Okay, them young ones think a little different. They think it all belongs to them, right? But one mistake that I used to see people make, just say that, one mistake I used to see people make was that they will go into interviews just as the interviewee. Like, okay, they're asking the interviewer is asking all the questions, they're doing all of that. They, pick me with a pick me mentality, when you're really going in, and especially because of the amount of time that you spend at your job, it is so very important that it's something that aligns with where you're going. Okay, so I know, I'm an entrepreneur, all that good stuff. We focus on that, owning your own, doing your own business. But when you realize that you are the brand, that's also very important, because it has, wherever you're at, needs to align with where you're going. It may not be your ultimate destination. It might not be where you want to end up, but it needs to align with where you're going, and to help catapult you or get you to the next level that you need to get, or get you the skill sets that you need in order to get to the next level, right? So during the interview process, that was something I was asking her. Okay, what are your routes for growth and promotion? Is that available for me? Okay, is that available for me? Brown skin, right? I needed to know that. And I don't know if she would have just told me outright, like, no, we're not going to promote you here. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have gotten the job. So I did ask the question at least. So again, smaller company, they're trying to grow, they're trying to do all that. They need hard-working, dedicated people. They need people who are reliable. They need people who are trustworthy. Right? So, okay, cool. I'm all those things. So I'm sitting up there, I'm doing my thing, answering the phones, doing all these things. And because of the type of company that it was, real estate and property management, there were so many different avenues to learn. There were so many different things that I could get my hands on. There were so many different things. I was so, when I tell you nosy, I was nosy in these people's jobs. I was nosy. I was listening to every conversation I could listen to. I was, whether it was on the sales side of things, whether it was on the property management side of things, I was walking around. Hey, if you needed something, the realtors needed something, hey, I could get it for you. You needed help with that copier, that printer, hey, I could do this for you, because I wanted to glean the information. I wanted to be able to learn from them. I wanted to be able to sit under them. I'm not too proud to do that. I'm not too proud to do that. That was me. Because now I felt like I was in a place where my work would be rewarded. Okay, so back to the same old me. I'm working, grinding. I'm learning and I'm picking up information, right? I'm asking those questions. I'm doing all of those things. And as I'm doing that, they kept to their word. I kept to mine. Okay, I began to be promoted. There were different levels and different stages to things. The first one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken or mixing up the order, I believe it was just getting my real estate license. And if I got my real estate license, I would automatically receive a pay raise. Well, cool. I don't have no questions asked about that, because I know the rules for this game. I know how to play. So I went and got my real estate license. Okay. And I'm not sure for my actual license how many times I had to take the test to get the license. I don't think I had to take it too many times for the regular real estate license. But man, when I tell you about that broker license, when it came to that, woo, your girl had real tears. Okay. But yeah, so I got my license, I got my raise. I'm happy, right? I see progress, I see promotion. And One of the things and this is really important just for where I was at, because at that particular time, my expectation, my salary, my income expectation was so super low. It was super low. When I tell you, I was at a place at that time where, man, I was good. I was good if I made it to $30,000 a year. And of course, in this economy, that sounds utterly ridiculous, right? In this economy now. But then I felt like $30,000 was cool, because that was the extent of my experience. Okay. So if I can consistently make I'm like $30,000, $35,000 a year. Oh yeah, I've made it. Okay. I've made it. At that point, that's what I was thinking. Like, that's the goal that I was reaching at. That's what I was striving for. Doing all this work, busting my tail. That's what I was striving for. And it's important to know that, because in my little head, I had this number of $30,000, $35,000, and I'm still not knocking that salary, because for some people, that's a lot of money. For some people, that is a ton of money, right? But it is important to know, because as God begins to, and I want to note that, because I'm going to say the owner of this company promoted me, but as God, you got to remember that God is orchestrating this whole thing in ways that I never even imagined. Okay, so as God is promoting me, in my little head, that's the number that I was thinking, and God was thinking much more than that. And that's important, because that's the reason why you always want to be walking in God's plan, on His path, right? This company set a path for me, set a goal for me. But when you're walking on God's path, He will blow your mind. He will blow your mind. So at that time, again, that's the price what I was thinking. So I'm pushing for that goal. Okay, I'm cool. What began to change my perspective is because I'm working in real estate sales and property management. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing commission checks. I'm seeing even kind of more than that, I'm seeing different industries, okay? Because I'm looking at applications, I'm approving people, we're working with, some pretty high-end properties on one side of things. So I'm looking at some incomes coming in where people are like making $10,000 a month, $12,000 a month, $15,000 a month, and I'm calling the people back. My silly self, let me tell you how silly I am. My silly self, I'm calling the people back, just making sure that they didn't make a mistake on the application. And after a while, I began to think, like, wait a minute, these people aren't making a mistake. There's more out there. There's way more out there, and even jobs that I did not expect for their pay to be where they're at. I'm looking like, wait a minute, now this is completely attainable to me, should I choose to take that path. So things even like, I think I saw one income come in, and it was I think it was like the manager or something like that at the Kangaroo. At the Kangaroo, the gas station. Ain't nothing wrong with the gas. I had to get gas early. Okay, ain't nothing wrong with working at the gas station. But for me, I'm just like, for the manager at the gas station, I don't know how much it is now, but at the time, I believe that particular manager was making maybe like $50,000, $60,000, somewhere around there. For the manager at the gas station. Now again, in my mind, I'm thinking my max, I'm retiring on $35,000. That's my mind at the time, right? So now I'm beginning to expand my thinking, because I'm like, wait a minute. It didn't matter the place or anything like that, but what it did for me was it began to show me that greater was not so far out of reach. It was not so far out of reach. Okay? So I'm still doing my thing. I got my first little promotion, first raise. That's good. And as I'm working, and this is something that had been a pattern for me throughout my work career, okay, up until this point, that as I was working, as I was pushing, I didn't always fall into resistance. I actually felt the favor of God. Okay, I felt the favor of God in most situations where almost every employment that I worked at, a position, a place was created for me. It was created for me. And what I mean by that is that I would come in at one position, a lower level position, and I would work so hard that either I would create, okay, I would design, I would create, or they would create a position for me to have a promotion or to have, so I have felt the favor of God in my employment. This particular place was no different, where the harder I worked, the more I worked. And when I say worked, I would be the first one in. It probably was almost a little too much. I would be the first one in and the last one to go. When I say the first one in, it came to a point because they were a growing company, right? And you don't always have the resources or whatever available or staff available to do what needs to be done to get you to that next level. Okay? So I would be the one, okay, I'm working, I'm cool. When I say come in, sometimes I would come in 7:30. 7 o'clock in the morning to begin getting things done. This is on somebody else's job. Okay? On somebody else's job. I would come in that early. I would leave late, maybe like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. This is as I'm getting promotions, so they began making space for me, began making room for me at this particular job, where I began learning more and learning more and learning more, and they began to promote me, put me in different positions. So going from receptionist to administrative assistant, from administrative assistant, at the time we had a property manager there. And again, things were just working out. She was great, learned a lot from her, but things began to work out. And it got to a point where we had some, staff changes, some management change, some higher ups changes, a lot of changes. But through those changes, it made room for me. It made room for me to grow. It made room for me to see the different aspects of the business. It made room for me to maneuver. It made room for me I held those difficult conversations that people didn't want to hold. If they didn't want to take a phone call, especially when it came to property management. And this part was super important, because especially when it came to property management, when I tell you the difficult conversations, and at this particular place, it was like we were putting out a lot of fires. Okay, meaning that every day somebody had an issue. Every day somebody had a problem, right? And as a growing company, sometimes you run into that issue. I learned later on, or I began to look at it differently later on, where there was a lot of things when it came to procedure and process that could have prevented a lot of the things that we were dealing with at that company. Again, at the time though, that was not my company, so I had to play by their rules, but cool. So when it came time for difficult conversations, when it came time to talk to owner, man, I crafted those conversations. So much to the point, instead of shying away from, let me have it. Because one of the things that I noticed, the difference between me, the position I was in at the time, and that property manager that worked there, the difference between me and the property manager, she handled the more difficult things. Every time we had to escalate something, it went to her. But I handled, for the most part, the rest of the staff handles the day-to-day. But what did she handled the difficult, that she handled everything that needed to be escalated. So I started handling the things that needed to be escalated, right? And I crafted those conversations. I crafted the customer service and the customer relations portion of it. And again, continue to grow. It got to a point where we had a lot of changes in the company. Again, back to ownership and all this stuff began to go on with the company. And I got to a point where I was promoted to the operations manager for property management. And we had somebody for the sales side of things. So now here I am running the entire property management division. And at this time, of course, the company has grown substantially. The company has grown substantially. Okay, we were known as one of the fastest growing real estate sales and property management companies in our local area. Okay, they were a dynamic team when it came to the owners, when it came to, you know, the front face, and then when it came to behind the scenes tech and all that good stuff, they were dynamic in that regard. Terrible on the rest, you know, when it came to their relationship. And that's the other thing. I will say this: they were in a relationship, they were like fiance or something like that, and they were running this business together. That part is only important because I got to see the dynamics of a relationship in business. Okay, so that allowed me to see things done well and allowed me to see things done not so well. Okay, so again, so here we are at the point where now I'm operations manager of property management. Now at this point, I've been at the company, I would say at least maybe like 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, been in the company. Along with this, well, I'm going to stop it there, and then we're going to come back for part